The secret meeting on Jekyll Island. This presentation was given by G. Edward Griffin, in Los Angeles, California, back on November 18, 1994. Jekyll Island does exist off of the coast of Georgia, and this meeting took place in 1907. The meeting was composed of 7 men who were intelligent, and they were millionaires, versed in psychology to control the mind and to establish a stable economical position to have currency coming in at its lowest costs within their favor for a long time. This meeting was so secretive that they should not speak to each other when they traveled to Jekyll Island other than when they were at the table discussing this plan. Jekyll Island is a place that wealthy men owned, and they could go and relax and on occasion spend their vacation time there. At some point after this meeting occurred there, the state of Georgia purchased the island. If you were to go there, you would see a plaque on the room door that says the Federal Reserve System was created in this room. And so I will say this, in order for this scheme to work, fake money had to exist. In other words, the flexible currency had to come into play. You will see how flexible currency will be a part of this scheme, and what flexible currency is. For 9 days they sat at a table and strategized this well-organized plan for control of the world. This plan should not be exposed for anyone to filter through this scheme. Now, in order for this plan to work, they had to put things in motion for politicians, and the general public. And so here we go. First things first, they had to use their own money to get this into motion. This was because one of the 7 men was a Republican senator by the name of Nelson Aldrich, who was in office, and the leadership was not in approval of this bill he was trying to present for passing. Here's what they did. They had to come up with a name that would make it sound official. The first name of the bill they had was presented by Mr. Aldrich, the official, who was one of the men who was a Republican senator. And they knew by him being a Republican senator that it wouldn't pass, and so they had to convince the Democratic Party to present the bill because they stood for the working class. But first, the name had to be changed, and it would have to sound like something official that belonged to the government. And they came up with the name Federal, which would relate to the government, Reserve, which would make it stand for they had more than enough money, and System to make it sound like it would be worldwide. So the name the Federal Reserve System was established as the official name. Now the second step was to rewrite the bill, because at that time the Republicans were for the wealthy and the Democrats were for the working people. Once this was done, now the circulating of this new name called the Federal Reserve System had to become known. They donated and paid money to other organizations, newspapers, television stations, other organizations, politicians, and any group that had the influence to get notarization to the general public and make it popular for people, and the Senate would have no choice but to pass this legislation for the goodness of the people. This took place for 3 years, and in December of 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was introduced to Washington, D.C., and it was passed. Since the passing of this bill, it has been changed over 100 times up to this day. But let's look between the years 1907 to 1910, let's look at some of the things that had to happen. In order for this to work, it would have to be a cause, and 2 parties would have to benefit. The government was broke and they need money, and the group wanted to have control over the economy with a flexible currency. So that we now can see how and why both sides would benefit.